All right, all right, all right. I think we're ready to get started. Hello, hello, everyone. I always enjoy the opening music here. You find me in the background, like bobbing my head back and forth. It's really awesome. So, I am super excited to be hosting this webinar today on becoming a data engineer with DataCamp. We have so many folks joining us from all over the world. Everyone, do let me know where you are joining from. I really, really appreciate everyone engaging here. It's truly an honor seeing people from all over the world. I'm going to start maybe showing some of the folks joining in. We have Mr. Jason Ward from Barbados. Hello, Jason. Good to see you. We have Eugenio from Colchester, England. Maybe Amy can help me. Amy's going to be joining us shortly from the UK. She'll be able to help me here. Yeah, Colchester. Reese just let me know on the chat. We have David Hartzman. Hello to you as well. Let us know where you're joining from, David. And we have Steve from Montreal. Good to see you. We have Raj from Mumbai. Boris from Nova Scotia. Alex from Washington. So we got North America. We have a few people from Europe. We have Barbados. We have India. Um, Manish from India. Awesome to see. Alphonse from Nairobi, Kenya. Another person from Barbados as well. Andrew, good to see you. Barbados represented today. Darlene from Virginia, awesome to see as well. Uh, Mashek from Poland loves DC and Adele. I love you too as well, Mashek. I really appreciate it. Dzień dobry. Thank you so much. Really appreciate your support. Um, then Eugenio, I'd like to get some tips on how to transition from a data analyst to data engineer, where you're in the right place, sir. And then Pavel from Germany, hello. Anis from Dubai, marhaba Anis, good to see you. Manish, hello as well to you too. Pavel from Łódź, Poland. I've actually been to Łódź. Very, very good. And with that, I'm being told by the team that I need to move on, but I love to show all of the folks joining in. We have folks as well from South Africa. I'll just mention a couple of extra places. New York City, Kazakhstan, and Arizona. Awesome to see people from all over the world and I think every continent, if I'm not mistaken. We're still missing Australia. That said, I think we have a very awesome session for you today. One of the most important professions in any data team is the data engineer, and luckily we have quite a lot of resources for you to get started on your data engineering journey here at DataCamp. So I'll get started here. We have some slides prepared for you. But before we get started, just in case this is your first time watching a DataCamp webinar, if you're not necessarily familiar with DataCamp, what is DataCamp? Our mission is to democratize data and AI skills for everyone. We do this by providing organizations and individuals best-in-class data and AI upskilling through our interactive learning curriculum. We help them build work-ready skills with DataCamp Data Lab, and we help them grow their data team and or grow their skills personally through DataCamp certifications. We're going to talk about these certifications quite a lot. This is why more than 14 million learners and 4,000 data-driven organizations work with DataCamp, and that's the marketing spiel here. So in case you need in case you're interested in upskilling yourself or your team, do check out DataCamp. And now I'm also joined. I want to make sure that we're introducing our guests here. I'm joined by Arna Warnke, who is our head of emerging curriculum. Arna, good to see you. Arna will be. Yeah, good to see you, Arna. Yeah.
Should I say
Arna
something? Sorry.
Yeah, please just say introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Anne. My team and I, we are responsible for kind of like the data engineering content here at DataCamp, but also the machine learning engineering content. So kind of like the deployment, operations, maintenance of data science and data applications, as well as the software development and software engineering curriculum.
Awesome. So definitely going to cover a lot of data engineering curriculum that's developed by Arna and his team. We're also joined by Amy Gott, who is responsible for our certification content and our certifications. Amy?
Hello. Yeah, I mean, Adele said it all, so I will let you leave it there and move on.
Yeah, awesome. And we're also joined by Luigi, who manages our DataCamp portfolios. Luigi, great to see you.
Yeah. Our team. One of the things that our team does is DataCamp Portfolio. So very excited and curious to see how people use that tool to tell their data story, pretty much.
Yeah, that's great. So we're going to talk about how you can, Arna's going to be walking us through how you can learn on DataCamp. Amy's going to be talking about how you can get certified as a data engineer on DataCamp. And Luigi's going to be talking about how you can build your data portfolio on DataCamp. But before, I'll maybe set the stage a bit and discuss what the modern data engineering skill set looks like today in 2024. So, in a nutshell, what is data engineering? I love this quote from Joe Rice and Matt Hasley. I love Joe Rice's podcast as well. I highly recommend that you guys check it out. Data engineering is the development, implementation, and maintenance of systems and processes that take in raw data and produce high quality, consistent information that supports downstream use cases such as analysis and machine learning. And in a nutshell, data engineers are the plumbers of the data organization. What they allow is the flow of data from raw data that is being collected to ready to analyze and ready to use data by the wider organization and teams. It's an absolutely foundational role for any organization that wants to work with data. And what that means is that their primary responsibility is to deliver the correct data in the right form to the relevant stakeholders as efficiently as possible. So, what do data engineers do in a nutshell? One, they manage databases and they design databases that store data. They monitor data quality, costs for upholding that data and making sure that it's high quality. Make sure that the data is being flowed with low latency. So, as in, let's say if you are a data engineer that works in stock trading, or in the financial services industry, the flow of data needs to be extremely fast. For example. Right. They work on identifying and experimenting with new tools that improve the process of building data pipelines. They collaborate with data scientists, analysts, the commercial teams to understand what their data requirements are so that they build pipelines accordingly. And they build solutions that are ready for production. So this is where the programming skills come into play. So they design ETL pipelines. This is what we call extract, transform, load pipelines, or ELT pipelines, extract, load, transform pipelines, which you'll be able to learn about in all of our courses, as well as building systems with continuous integration and continuous development, which allow for continuous deployment, which allow for systems to be resilient against issues or mistakes. They also have analytics fundamentals. They are able to process and monitor downstream use cases just in case for any thing that needs to be improved within the ETL pipelines. So, what skills do you need to become a data engineer? One, strong programming skills, data management skills, so the ability to build databases and design them, and exploratory analysis and communication, which is quite essential for most data roles, including the data engineering role. And in a lot of ways, right, in smaller companies especially, data scientists often find themselves required to also act as data engineers. So if you find yourself, you're a 2-3 person data science team and you all have the title data scientist in a really small organization, sometimes you may find yourself doing a lot of data engineering work. So for any of the data scientists here that want to transition maybe to smaller organizations or are working in startups, learning data engineering skills is also quite essential to be a multifaceted data professional. So if you have machine learning skills and if you have data analysis skills and you improve your skill set with data engineering skills as well, you'll have numerous tools to apply at different problems across the data lifecycle within your organization. And if we think about our own data platform internally at DataCamp, right? Um, we perform ingestion of over 50 plus data sources, right? Thinking from how people use the DataCamp website to our payment system to how folks such as yourself are interacting with this content, for example, that by attending this webinar, and we process more than 1,500 transformations to deliver data from these raw sources into more than 10 plus teams that work with our data, from BI tooling to ad hoc interactions, right? And to give you an illustration, this is a quite simplified view, but there's tons of data from our billing platforms, our Salesforce, using tools such as Heap or Snowplow to track website traffic, or website interactions, such as how folks are using the DataCamp platform. That data is then extracted using a tool such as Fortran. It's loaded into a data warehouse, which is BigQuery. We're Google folks here at DataCamp, and that data is then transformed and loaded into tools such as Looker or Power BI or Data Lab or Shiny, depending on the team that is using it. So yeah, this is a great illustration of how data flows within the organization, and our data engineers are responsible for making sure that that data that goes from these raw sources ends up in ready to use formats in these tools. So with that, I'm going to introduce Arna, who's going to come here and walk us through how you can build the skills to build these types of pipelines on DataCamp. Arna, take it away.
Thank you, Adel. Yeah, let's kind of like first discuss kind of like the courses we offer to learn these skills. And so DataCamp has a lot of technologies also for a long time, kind of like focusing, especially like Python and SQL. But we also had kind of like Airflow courses, Scala courses, Shell, for example. But in the last year, we invested heavily in expanding our data engineering curriculum and adding new technologies here. For example, we added like dbt, it's super important technology in this field, Docker. We just launched our first Kubernetes course. Regarding data management, what Adel mentioned, we added kind of like 4 cloud data warehousing technologies: BigQuery, Databricks, Redshift, Snowflake, and kind of like several courses kind of like focusing on what you would do or what you will do or what you are doing as a data engineer, like introduction to data pipelines, ETL, ELT pipelines, data modeling in Snowflake, kind of like how you kind of like prepare the data, the different ways how you can kind of like ensure uniqueness, for example, moving perhaps from SQL to NoSQL in our interactive introduction to NoSQL course. Also kind of like some conceptual content, like what is DevOps, what is it about, or kind of like what are the programming paradigms. You see kind of like among the 3 skills, kind of like Adel mentioned, we kind of like focusing heavily on data management and programming. We'll kind of like further invest in data engineering in the future, kind of like with, for example, a Kafka course for kind of like streaming data. We will launch our first Java course and additional Java courses in the next half year. So Q3, Introduction to Java is planned. And then kind of like we also offer courses on APIs in Python. The first course, Introduction to APIs in Python, will focus on kind of like an understanding what are APIs and how do I consume them with Python. And then we kind of offer like a follow-up course, Introduction to Fast API, kind of like how to build APIs, the Fast API in Python. So these are courses, kind of like, but we will also offer, we want to offer you an opportunity to apply the skills you have learned here, the projects, kind of like, and we have also kind of like a few projects on the next slide, kind of like where we have different technologies where you can apply them. As I mentioned, the 4 cloud data warehousing technologies, BigQuery, Databricks, Redshift, Snowflake, plus SQL, different projects here, Python, PySpark, for example. Kind of like, if you take these projects, I would be super interested to hear your feedback. Feel free also to add me via LinkedIn and let me know if you enjoyed it, if you kind of like have some feedback for these projects. Kind of like we will add more, kind of like also kind of like more cloud relevant projects. So you can really practice what you learned. The next topic is career tracks. Let's start with career tracks. Historically, we had kind of like a data engineer with Python career track. We split that track already in 2 tracks, like an associate data engineer in SQL, which focuses a little bit on the theoretical foundations of data engineering and kind of like really provides you with all the SQL skills you need to know. Then building up on that track, there's the data engineer in Python, which is much more than only Python. It kind of like it teaches you the foundations of Python, but also kind of like additional technologies like Git, for example, like Airflow. There are also different projects involved, kind of like introduction to data pipelines, again, kind of like really like end-to-end data pipelines, and a little bit like a first view into what are containerization and virtualization. And still in June, we will launch the professional data engineer in Python track, this will be the first DataCamp track, career track, which has 2 other tracks as a prerequisite. And this really highlights in a positive sense how challenging the data engineering role is, kind of like how many skills you need to know to kind of like let the data flow from kind of like the origin to the end point, how to kind of like let different technologies speak with each other, how to orchestrate it, how to work the streaming data. Here we kind of like as I mentioned, DBT, we'll look at kind of like how to do code testing in Python, Docker, Kubernetes, Kafka, working with big data, with PySpark. Kind of like stay tuned. That will launch in 2 or 3 weeks. But next to career tracks, we will have also different skill tracks, which kind of like you can complete much faster than the career tracks. Here you see like the big data and the PySpark course, which is live. We have kind of like, we go look a little bit down, the Python programming course, which skill track, sorry, not course, which is live, but which we will revise next and relaunch next week together with the Python programming fundamentals skill track. And in 2 weeks or so, we'll also kind of like add the containerization and virtualization skill track, where you not only have the introduction to Docker course, but also intermediate Docker and Kubernetes. Not super relevant for data engineers, but also many other groups like software engineers, data scientists, etc. And now kind of like I introduced you kind of like our curriculum, and Amy will kind of like tell you now more about how to become a certified data engineer with DataCamp.
Thank you, Anna. Yeah, so it doesn't just end at the learning. Anna's gone through all of the content that you can do to start to build those skills as a data engineer. And what we're doing with certification is giving you the opportunity to show to potential employers or even your current employer that you have the skills necessary for the role that you are wanting to undertake. If you're not familiar with certification at DataCamp, certification is broken into 3 different areas. So we have on the right-hand side there, we have fundamental certifications. And these certifications allow you to demonstrate that you have foundational skills in data. So if you are coming into data for the first time or know someone coming into data for the first time, this is a really great starting point to just build some confidence. On the left-hand side, then, we've got technology certifications. So these are more aimed at people who need to use particular tools related to data in their roles, but are maybe not a data professional themselves or not wanting to be a data professional. And in the middle there, we have career certifications, which is where we're really focusing on today. So these are certifications that we build with experts in the field. So we actually go out, if we're thinking about data engineering, and we talk to people who hire data engineers in their organizations and ask them, what does it take to be a data engineer? And what do you want to see from people coming into that role? And they help us to put together a specification for what we need to test you on to make sure you have the skills to get a role in data engineering. So if we go on to the next slide, when it comes to data engineering, we currently have 2 data engineer related certifications. So we have our Data Engineer Associate certification, and as of this week, it actually just launched on Monday, we now have our 2nd Data Engineer certification too. In terms of the content of these, how are they're different? Data Engineer Associate is really ideal if you are very much at the beginning of your journey to being a data engineer. So if you are working towards maybe your first internship as a data engineer, this would be a really ideal certification for you. It covers the SQL foundations. Anna mentioned the track there. It covers the SQL foundations that are going to get you started. The data engineer certification then goes on to cover all of those Python skills that you're going to need. So all of the programming skills, but also data management skills that you are going to need. So they're the two that we have. In terms of how do you get these certifications, well, the process that you're going to go through, if we move on to the next slide, is to take some exams. So we're not going to just hand this out to you for taking the tracks. You do have to show that you have this knowledge. And the way that we test you on this is through some timed and practical exams. So if you're, depending on which certification you are taking, you're going to take 1 or 2 timed exams. And this is where you're going to show that you just have that SQL or Python knowledge, or both, if you're at that second level of the role. For all of our certifications, data engineer included, we are then going to give you a practical exam. And this is where we want to see that you can bring all of those skill sets together and solve a problem that you would experience in the real world. All of our timed and practical exams are, again, written by people who are in these jobs. They're all active practicing data engineers. So they're bringing their experience in to test you on the sorts of things you would see in that particular job. All of our exams are auto-graded, so you're going to know immediately whether you have passed those and are ready to progress. If you are sat there thinking, I've done all of the learning already, I'm ready to take these exams, or maybe you're thinking about how do I get to the exams once I've done the learning, you'll probably want to go through some of our preparation materials. So on the next slide, we not only provide the exams, but we also provide a whole range of preparation materials, from assessments that you can use to just see, is your knowledge at the right level? Is there any extra learning you need to do? To practice practical exams. It can be quite intimidating to go from projects where you get that guidance to a practical exam where we take everything away and expect you to do it yourself. So we do provide some practice exams. We've also got lots of materials on common mistakes that people make that you can learn from. We've been doing this now for a number of years, so we've seen lots of mistakes that people make on the way that can help you out with getting through. So hopefully you're going to go through all of that. You're going to take the exams, you are going to pass, and you're going to get a really nice badge and certificate that you can show off on LinkedIn to demonstrate that you have the skills of a data engineer. Once you're certified, you can also join our exclusive certification community. This community is only available to people who hold a certification, so you won't find this any other way. And you can, through that community, chat to other people who are in a similar position to you, maybe others who have maybe just gone through that process, or maybe a little ahead of you, or who are also in that process and can give you some advice and feedback and recommendations and things like that. But your certification will also appear on your portfolio, your DataCamp portfolio, and we would recommend that once you've gone through that certification process, if you are looking for a job, that is the next step you take. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Luigi, who is going to talk you through the portfolio in more detail.
Awesome. Thank you, Amy. Yeah, building your DataCamp portfolio, it's very easy. But before we jump into any of that, I would like to first specify on what I would like to focus on in this section. So I will first start with 3 things. What is your DataCamp portfolio? Tips on how to collect your projects for your DataCamp portfolio, and then tips on how to tell your data story. So on this slide, what I want to emphasize is, once we started doing the research around data portfolios, and we had many user interviews, and we were trying to figure out how this product will best help our users, we realized that the number one problem was that our users spend way too much time searching and organizing their projects for their portfolios outside of DataCamp. So they were using tools like GitHub, Webflow, or Wix, or even building their own sites using React. And that, of course, take way too much time. So that's why we, if you go to the next slide, one of our main goals after is that we then quickly realize the main problem that we need to help our users solve is a quick way to organize their projects and showcase their data story in a very unique way, in a way that basically helps them tell their data story succinctly. So we can remove all the work they need to do on top of their projects and allow them to purely focus on the projects, which is the most important part of their data of their portfolio. And that's why, if you go to the next slide, that's why data portfolios helps you achieve pretty much. You can add all your DataCamp projects, all the ones that Arne and Amy mentioned, do your practical assessment that you do for your certification. But at the same time, you can also add any external research paper you have done, any patent, any data set, any other project or data workflow you have done outside DataCamp, because it's also quite important to tell your holistic story as well. So how do we go thinking about your data engineering portfolio? How do you start? What are the general principles? That's what I would like to start to jump in right now. So let's start with part number one, which is collecting your projects. Part number one is collecting the projects. Part number two is the storytelling. So let's go to the previous slide. There we go. All right. So believe it or not, a lot of recruiters see hundreds of applications every day. And dozens of them are about the same things. They're very, very repeated projects that you see over and over again. And believe me, you don't want to be one of those persons. So make sure that your projects are those that come from a place of authentic passion. There are things that you're passionate about, things that you like to do, and you are willing to speak about for a long time. So make sure that's point number one. Go to the next slide, please. Yeah, great projects as well. Demonstrate your technical skills, but again, keep in mind that you don't have to show every technical skill you have. Make sure that whenever you build your DataCamp portfolio or any portfolio, make sure you show projects that demonstrate skills that complement each other, not skills that repeat over and over again. So again, remember that you basically have a very limited amount of time to call the attention of a potential recruiter. That's the goal of the portfolio. So it's better to add things that really complement each other and say who you are than just add all the projects you have had. Next, the last point is related to point one, avoiding cookie cutter projects. Again, they don't help showcase your passion, but let me clarify that cookie cutter projects are not necessarily bad for you to learn or get your hands dirty with a specific data set, or if you are trying to learn something new, if you're just getting started in data science, they could be helpful in that way. But you should avoid making them your own, because again, related to the first point, these are very likely projects that recruiters will see over and over again, and you would like to avoid that. So that's on the project side. If we go into the storytelling part on how do we make it personal, the goal for this part is to see how we tie together all of these projects into one storyline. Number one, we have here, tell your story. I think it is very important that your readers are able to follow your journey in your data career, how you go from knowing nothing to grow into, hey, I am a data engineer and I'm able to do this. But at the same time, I have all of these skills. This is how I think, and this is the problems I am able to solve. Next. Yeah. The other one is adapting your projects and make it unique in your own, and adapt the design and the writing style as a template. And this is more of a tip to make things easy for you when you write your projects. I tend to see over and over again that people, some users basically create their projects. They have a really nice structure in some projects, but then in another project they don't have anything. They just have a link with a GitHub repository without telling the actual story of the problem they were trying to solve, the way they thought about the problem, and so on. So I think it is very important for you to have a template where you basically are able to tell the story of a specific project, and you can reuse that over multiple projects. And finally, for this one, is remember your soft skills as well. Explain how you approach the problem, how you solve the problem. Your thought process is very important for recruiters. Maybe alternatives on how you solve a specific problem and why you pick this solution in particular. I think when you come from a recruiter's point of view, that's most of the things they're trying to look for is has this person consider a broad the solution space, rather than this is the only thing I know how to do and why and how to do it, rather than this is the right solution for this specific problem. That thinking goes a long way. So keep that in mind whenever you build your projects. And finally, just to summarize all of these tips into one slide, and this is the main takeaway of this section, is number one, keep it simple. 3 to 5 projects that show your passion and skill diversity. Again, try to make sure you have skills that complement each other, especially in the data engineering space, where you have, as you have seen, a wide variety of skills that sometimes overlap with data science and sometimes overlap with data analytics, or you have to transition from one space to another. Keep in mind that all of these skills in a way complement each other, and say who you are as a data professional. Second, keep the reader's experience in mind. A blog post, a video, a presentation that just shares the problems you are trying to solve and why you picked a specific solution, they go a long way. So make sure you make it easier for them to understand your skills, your problems, your passions. And finally, just make sure you have a personal brand that stands out and helps you be memorable. Again, recruiters read a lot of portfolios and resumes every day. So just make sure you make one that stands out, with making it unique, make unique projects, avoiding cookie cutter projects, and just have a style of writing that actually stands out and is clear, and it goes exactly to the point. Finally, I think this will be it. So I would pass over to Adele for a final closing notes.
All right. Thank you so much, Luigi, Arna, Amy, so far for all of these incredible insights. What I wanted to share here is just some final closing notes before we jump into Q&A. As we mentioned, right, the DataCamp data engineering journey, start learning on DataCamp, whether through courses that aren't covered or tracks or projects. There's something here for everyone. And then the next step after that is getting DataCamp certified. Quite a few different data engineering certifications that Amy showed us today. Join the the DataCamp certified community, where you'll be able to, once you pass the certification, you join the DataCamp certified community and get support and advice from like-minded individuals, and then build your portfolio and start the job hunt. And with that, I'll invite back on all of our speakers today. Just in case there's any questions, I already see 12 of them. Do let us know. We do have quite a bit of time. Do ask your questions as well. I have a question here, maybe for Arna. This one is for Jason, from Jason. I have a similar question here. Also, another question asked by Eugenio Borelli. Should I start as an analyst first, then engineer after, as I am more comfortable with SQL and I am now learning Python? Like, how do you, maybe whoever wants to take this question on, what is everyone's tips from transitioning from a data analyst role to a data engineering role? Actually, I'll start with Amy, then I'll ask Arna.
Go to me. I was hoping you'd ask someone else first so I could think that. No, I think this is a really interesting question, and it's something that we see a lot, and I hear a lot of people saying they're in this role and they want to move to that one, or can they move between them? What we see, especially with certification, is that a lot of the skills for one data role are very much used in other data roles. There are unique skills to each role that you also have to build, but you're probably, with any of these, going to have a really strong foundation that will make it easier for you to move to another data profession. Should you start as a data analyst and then move to a data engineer? I think that's a question for you to answer. Where is your true passion? If your passion is to be a data engineer, go for that. Don't go for a role that you're not super interested in. But if you are interested in both, maybe do start as a data analyst, and then you can get exposure to data engineering that way and see, do you want to move into that role? So sorry, that's sort of a non-answer to the question, but that would be my input.
Yeah, maybe Arna, I'll reframe the question. Like, what are the skills that you recommend people to learn if they're already data analysts, right? What do you think they should pick up to become data engineers?
I think there are kind of like two kind of personas who move into the data engineering field. Kind of like, remember, that's typically not something you learn at university or so, being a data engineer. So it's either kind of like people who move from software engineering, for example, into data engineering, or those kind of like moving from data analyst, for example, kind of like field into data engineering. If kind of like, of course, those the software engineering background, they bring up kind of like a lot of experience in kind of like coding, the kind of like Java, the Python, perhaps C, etc. And kind of like realistically in a job interview, it might be a little bit difficult to compete with them if it's a very technical data engineering role. So if you're more moving kind of like from the data analyst role, there's also this new kind of like a little bit hybrid job role of an analytics engineer. I think Adele also can tell a lot of more about it. And I think this is really kind of like the perfect kind of like stepping stone into like really like a data engineering role. So there you kind of like are a little bit more towards the back end than a typical data analyst, more kind of like working about kind of like creating, maintaining databases, for example, perhaps also orchestration, scheduling, but not kind of like super much in the back end. Adele, you want to add something about that?
No, actually, that definitely 100% on the analytics engineering. So yeah, analytics engineering in a lot of ways is a kind of hybrid role, as Arna mentioned, between a data engineer and a data analyst, right? So really strong SQL skills, but you'll also be working creating a lot of views for other stakeholders to be able to extract these kind of interesting insights from tables. Now, if you're already comfortable with SQL, I think that's a great step for becoming a data engineer. And then probably the next step here is, as you mentioned, you're learning Python, maybe double down on that programming in Python from API work, and maybe dabble in some tools such as Airflow that are also on DataCamp. So yeah, highly recommend that you check out the data engineering tracks that we have. I think there's something definitely relevant for you. Another question here from Eugenio. I think I can answer that one because I actually had a podcast conversation recently that will be released soon about this. Are data engineers involved in data governance as well? So, depending on the size of the organization, data governance is often sorted by, the data governance team or data governance leads. And a lot of that feedback that data governance teams have, or a lot of the collaboration that data governance team have, tend to be with those that are building the pipelines that go to stakeholders, right? So data engineers in a lot of ways will probably need to work with a lot of stakeholders, from data governance folks to the downstream, the folks who are using the data on downstream use cases, to be able to improve the quality of the collection, transformation, and that is applied to data, so that data is high quality. The second thing as well that data engineers are quite heavily involved in is creating monitoring systems that enable the wider organization to detect any breakage in data quality. So that's maybe kind of the degree of involvement data engineers have in data governance. Am I missing anything, maybe, Arna, here?
No, I completely agree. I think it depends a little bit on whether there's like a centralized team or kind of like, I think still it's often the case that you have a lot of different decentralized data teams, and data governance is established from bottom up. So kind of like then you're really involved in that. But apart from that.
That's great. Another question here from Boris. How critical is it for a data engineer to know such programs such as Terraform, Kubernetes, and Jenkins? Maybe this one's for you, Arna, because we were discussing Jenkins a couple of days ago.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like, it's a very good question. Kind of what we've done, kind of like, I give a little bit background. Like half a year ago, we have screened perhaps like 30 different data engineers job postings to see what is asked for. And kind of like we have also for the certification, Amy can tell more about, have a lot of interviews, the data engineering hiring managers, for example. And what many of them tell you is kind of like the tech stack is so big, kind of like there's so many different technologies out there, what we have also seen in the job postings. And it's not expected from you that you know all of them. It's not expected that you need to know Jenkins. What people kind of like want kind of like to be ensured of is that you can kind of like work these technologies quite quickly. And this is often the cloud data warehousing tools. If you've used BigQuery, for example, people are comfortable, you can work with Redshift quickly. Yeah, kind of like, that's long story short. I think this Kubernetes, not necessarily, a little bit knowledge of Docker is probably kind of like helpful. I think Terraform, we can quickly kind of like get into it. Jenkins, I think it's not the main, not super widespread technology.
Okay, that's great. Another question here, this one on certifications from Naeem. I don't see that the data engineer in Python does not offer a certification at the end, the career track. Maybe, Amy, walk us through in a bit more depth, the certifications for data engineers and whether they apply for the data engineer in Python career track?
Yeah, so the data engineer in Python career track is the second track in the data engineer flow. So you've got the associate data engineer in SQL. Correct me if I'm getting these titles wrong, on data engineer in SQL first. That maps to our associate data engineer. Data engineer in Python maps to the data engineer certification. It won't be showing up yet. There won't be that nice certification available badge just yet because the certification is so new. The engineers haven't managed to get that button up yet. So it does map to the data engineer certification, and it will show that in the next week.
So yeah, it's coming soon, Naeem. It's coming soon.
Yeah.
Another question here for Arna from Eugenio. How important is object-oriented programming in Python for data engineers? Arna, I'll let you walk through it.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit coming back to my previous answer that there are kind of like two types of data engineers. I think if you're kind of like in a more in a data engineering role where you use different programming languages besides SQL, then I think it's important to have good coding skills so others can maintain the code you've write. You can scale it up, kind of like other people can understand what you're writing, for example. So good coding practices, including OOP, I think in these roles is important, I would say so, yes.
Okay, that's really great. And since Luigi, we haven't asked a portfolio question in a bit. What are examples of passion projects, Luigi? I'll let you expand on that.
Could get very philosophical very quickly to talk about what passion is. I would say ideally is find a general topic or a problem that you're very interested in. A few quite interesting examples it could be that I've seen around might not be necessarily related to data engineering, but I've definitely looked through a lot of data portfolios. And a few of them was, one of them was a person trying to evaluate vaccination rates for a specific town in her home country. In her hometown, I believe it was a town in Nigeria. But she was basically trying to figure out the relationship between a specific disease and some vaccination rates in different areas and locations. And she was very interested in health, and she could basically tell the story about how she was interested in working for a health-related company, and at the same time connect the story with her hometown. So it was a very nice flow to say, hey, I come from here, I care about these individuals, I care about the health of my town, and this is how I research health related topics. So hopefully that makes sense.
Can
It
I add
definitely
something?
does, Arne. Yeah, I'll let you interject. Yeah.
So I sometimes give kind of like mentoring tips to students, for example. And if they want to get into like the programming or the data world, I often say kind of like pick a topic you really care about. And not for the outside world, but really for you. Because if you, for example, want to get into OOP, for example, and define also working with some data, some functions. So I've in my kind of like I'm really the opinion that it kind of like you be much more motivated and much more likely to kind of like continue working with this if you care about kind of like the data set, for example, rather than it's something what's you kind of like not important to you.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with both of your points. I'll maybe kind of wrap up with one final point here is, we had Nick Singh on the Data Frame podcast. He's the author of Acing the Data Science interview. And he also, has a lot of interesting thoughts on building an effective data science portfolio. So one thing that he did when trying to break into data science himself, he's very passionate about music. He built a software, not software, maybe a website, right, that uses data in the backend to rank different Drake songs based on different parameters, right? So he scraped a Drake data set, added features to it, based on some parameters, and then built like a Drake song ranker, right? And that was able, through that project, he was able to get the attention of a hiring manager at Facebook and got an interview that way, right? So, doubling down on what Arne said, think about a topic that you're passionate about and that you could build an interesting data set around, right? Especially if you're creating an interesting original data set. I think that definitely indicates your passion towards a project. I just want to be mindful of time. I want to ask like additional questions here. This one is a technical one from Boris. With the $199 a year for a price for an individual, does that cover all of the courses certifications, or can I pick as many courses? It covers all of the courses that are available on DataCamp, as well as all of the certifications available on DataCamp. It's just a yearly subscription, and you get everything included. Another question from Eugenio. This one I'll ask you as well, Arne. A lot of demand for Arne today. Are you planning to introduce some courses in preparation for cloud data engineers, thinking Azure, AWS, Google Cloud Platform?
We do kind of like Azure and AWS. We have the one. We kind of like make them currently more interactive. GCP, it's a little bit kind of like given also market share a little bit later probably, but we do. Yes, big topic for us.
Okay, great. Another question here. Just because some of them have already been answered somehow. Oh, this is one for Amy. I'm curious what feedback you have received from employers regarding how they perceive the value of a candidate having DataCamp certifications. So, yeah, I'd love kind of hear conversations you've had, Amy, and maybe also references from the DataCamp community of folks who found jobs after certifications.
Yeah, I mean, the certification community is a great place if you want to be inspired by people going on to get jobs after that. So yeah, it's my favorite place to go once a week to see how people are doing. So, yeah, people are getting jobs after getting certified is the very short answer to that question. In terms of how hiring managers are kind of looking at this, so we are working with a panel of hiring managers. Essentially, I'm kept accountable by a panel of hiring managers who are telling us this is what the industry is looking for, this is what we are expecting, and that's kind of defining what is going into our certification, what the standard is. It's helping us to make sure that as we are in a very fast-moving industry, we're having to update our certifications to keep in line with that. So we're working with that panel. Beyond that, yeah, we are chatting to our own customers. We do have customers who are using certifications as part of their own development programs. So yeah, we are still relatively new if you compare us to other certifications, Amazon's and things like that. but we do have that backing from customers and industry in general.
Awesome. Another question here, maybe on the kind of psychology of trying to break into data engineering. So also, think about this not necessarily just on data engineering, but all of the roles that everyone has had here. I'm learning Python. This one's from Hazael. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. But I have a good background with coding and strong SQL skills. But sometimes I think the path to becoming a data engineer is tough. So when you're early in your career, how do you guys manage these types of feelings, like the challenges associated with breaking into a role? I had similar experiences myself. I went to break into data science. Actually, learned on DataCamp before trying to break into data science, and I also did a master's in data science. Yeah, it can be tough. I think the thing that personally sustained me was actually I was very passionate about the data space, and I was learning about it just for the sake of learning about it in a lot of ways. If you go on my Medium, you will be able to see some of early articles that I used to write on Medium, which I think kind of translated, which led me down a path that made me realize that I'm actually very passionate about education rather than being behind a computer and crunching numbers. And that led me, down a path of breaking into education technology, right? Where, here I'm at DataCamp, doing these things. So I would say what has sustained me during the times of challenging times, especially, is the passion I have for the space, right? So I hope that's helpful advice, and I would take it, the passion here as something that can sustain you when times are hard, and to look at and frame the challenges are opportunities to learn, right? So that's what helped me personally. I'll now field it to the group. Maybe I'll start with you, Arna.
No, I completely agree with this opportunities to learn. It might make sense perhaps to start in a very small company, for example, where you kind of like people kind of like really have to teach you something, where you're kind of like part of the group, perhaps meaning that you earn a little bit less during that time. Perhaps it's not like the Facebooks or Googles of this world. But yeah, kind of like if you're really passionate about it, if you enjoy kind of like working with the inner workings of Airflow, for example, I think this passion will help you to kind of like overcome and the obvious issues, kind of like technical, also kind of like challenges involved in it. Yeah, it's a tough question.
Amy, what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm a little bit older, so I managed to get into the data industry before it was cool to be in the data industry. So the start of my career was probably a little different. I have a very traditional academic background in statistics, but the data industry is now more competitive, and for me that means my later career has been more competitive than my early career. And I would reflect what Adele said, like, what is your passion? Why do you actually want to work in data? And really make sure that is front and center, not just when you're looking for a job, but every single day. Are you doing something that reflects your passion? And just keeping that in mind will help you through the tough kind of job search and the kind of the less glamorous days of data. It's not all as sexy as everyone tries to make it out. So, passion is really going to be the most important thing.
Yeah, and maybe sorry, I'll let you Arna continue.
So what I would perhaps also do is kind of like, if you perhaps struggling in their current job, or kind of like not sure if this is kind of like what you really want, to kind of like just look at job postings over time, kind of like save those which you kind of like find interesting, even if they kind of like, if they do not fit geographically or whatever. And then I think if you put them together over time, you see a little like a picture kind of like about the role you might be interested in. That helps you kind of like to define the end goal. And if you have that then identified, I think the struggles will kind of like disappear to a large extent.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Maybe Luigi, we talked about this becoming philosophical. I'll let you end it here. With some additional insight.
Well, I don't know. I think if I relate this to product management, I think there is a few similarities in the sense that there is no university degree that says, "Oh, you are now a product manager," or "You are now a data engineer." And a lot of the things you learn, it's like communication skills, or you have a lot of technical skills that you learn, but there are a lot of things that you learn on the job. And Arna mentioned, I think there are two things that I also apply to my own career. Thing number one is when you look at different roles, even if they don't relate, if let's say you want to become a role that you want to be in 10 years in the future, you can take those skills and kind of create a map of this is the professional I want to become. Of course, 10 years in the future, those skills will change and they will vary, but at least it will give you like a direction of what you should be working on right now today. And the second thing I wanted to say is that a lot of things is if you work for a smaller company or a startup. I started with a startup that had 3 people. I was the second hire, and then we grew it to 15. So the disadvantage of that is that there is no guide that will guide you and learn things through there. But the advantage is that you have a lot of room and a huge playground to play by yourself. So if you start as a data analyst in that company, you probably, if you are willing to learn by yourself and learn really fast, you have the playground and the ability to start applying things by yourself. That's applicable in the data space, and I'm sure some of those learnings could be applied if you in your own data career. That's just my experience.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think there's a lot of useful, especially product management. There's no playbook on how to break into product management. I think there's a lot of interesting insights that can carry over. We still have quite a few questions. I think a lot of them are related to, what are the technologies that you should learn to become a data engineer. For that, we will send over the slides. You can also reach out to Arna, myself, Amy, Luigi, all on LinkedIn. You all have our profiles. We'd love to answer any of the questions. We've gotten quite a lot of great feedback as well about the webinar, so I really appreciate it. And yeah, this one's for Luigi. Maybe lots of good advice, especially for portfolios. I couldn't agree more. I appreciate it, everyone. Thank you all so much for coming to this webinar. Make sure to check out the data engineering curriculum, whether for you or for your team. There's quite a lot of things that are for everyone. And make sure to check out our future events on this QR code that you see here. And it's been a privilege hosting these webinars. And thank you so much, Arna, Luigi, Amy, for joining us today.